Hi everyone, my name is Brian Edwards. Over the past few months, some of you may have been following me in terms of, for lack of a better word, some teaser videos that I've uploaded to YouTube, showcasing some pretty awesome functionality that I've implemented in a demo app created using Power Apps. The primary objectives for creating that demo app was to showcase how within a single app containing absolutely no connectors to that app, I was nonetheless able to surface an extensive amount of content stored within SharePoint Online by leveraging the Microsoft SharePoint and OneDrive for Business Graph v2 APIs. By making use of just 7 simple flows, most of which have no more than a single HTTP REST request to SharePoint action that in turn invokes a corresponding graph API that then retrieves a result set of rows that are returned back to that Power App. On each occasion, having uploaded those earlier demos, it was certainly my intention to post a corresponding blog pertaining to how I was able to leverage those graph APIs and the type of code that enabled all that content to be exposed. For better or worse, sometimes life happens, and publishing a blog that covers so much previously undocumented functionality, I subsequently encountered some or other obstacle, more typically defined as scope creep. So, with that in mind, the functionality that I'll be showcasing in this particular blog, in this particular demo app, is a classic example of that type of scope creep, which at least in my opinion puts the cherry on top of the cake for the soon-to-be published blog. For this particular demo app showcased in this video, I've included one additional flow to the overall solution, which I'll also speak to in that forthcoming blog. This particular demo basically enables you to get the type of search experience you would typically expect to get when you search for content on SharePoint Online, and the type of information that gets exposed on SharePoint Online. The primary difference between this app and that one, and what's available natively within SharePoint Online, is this app only surfaces content in SharePoint and not in other Office 365 apps such as Yammer, Outlook, Sway, and any other apps for that matter. However, with that said, for the awesome search capabilities showcased in this demo app thus equally speak to a far wider audience of citizen developers as well, who might otherwise have regarded the functionality as perhaps too complex to implement within their own apps because of the complexity of code. And there's no complexity to the code that I'll be showcasing today. So just starting off, I just wanted to show you the actual flow, and you can see that there's really just a trigger action and a response to return fields back to SharePoint, back to Power Apps. And the actual API calls is the SharePoint REST API, not a graph API, because the SharePoint REST API query exposes a lot more information and is a lot more useful. Even though it's been around for 3 years and longer, all of this functionality that I'm going to be showcasing is something that could have been done a long time ago. And hence why I wanted to showcase what's possible to do with that API. If I just run a test of that flow, just to give you an idea of how simple it could be, basically, for example, if there was only a single search text box on your screen and you wanted to do a search for something, you really can do a wildcard search just by typing in something like that, running it, and the flow will run and retrieve the 500 up to 500 rows. That's the threshold for this API, based on algorithm, whatever the ranking algorithm that determines the sequence of items that are displayed. So you can see that's basically run. That's all there is to it. In terms of the app that I created to showcase this flow, again, it's pretty simple. It's got a search button. There's a couple of options to filter data so that you don't have to type in certain information. There's a text box to put in your search term, and there's a gallery to return the results and display the results in. So if I go across to the actual demo app, just to give you an idea, and I'll do a similar query to what I just did in the flow, basically putting in a wildcard asterisk, a wildcard query, and it will return up to 500 rows, which you'll see over here. And those rows, as I said, will be returned based on sequence in terms of popularity and on items that have been in the environment. Now we can sort of go from there, and we can take it a little bit further and start putting in some actual real world type search terms. So for example, if I just type in the word welcome, what will now happen is it will look at all the contents, look at the titles, look at the information within each of these documents, and display that information based on the normal algorithm for that SharePoint REST API. You'll see that, for example, there's a document there called Welcome to Word. There's also a document, I think, called Welcome to PowerPoint. So if I want to refine this query a little bit further and I type in Welcome to Word, what will then happen is that, again, based on the ranking algorithm, the default one, it first surfaces the Welcome to Word document, and then the other documents such as the Welcome to PowerPoint. If I wanted a more specific one, just as you would if you're using Bing or Google for that matter, and you put that in quotes, it will then retrieve only that phrase, and you can see here what happens is now returns just a single document. So within the space of a couple of minutes, I've been able to find a specific document on a specific site in the environment, and it shows up in this query results. One thing though is that I know that there are actually two documents with the same name sitting on different sites. And by default, what the search API does is that it removes duplicate results and doesn't show them up. But you can surface those just by adding one query parameter to that string, which is to say do not trim duplicates. So if we add that and we basically put in that query string, I just have to put this in single quotes. You'll see now it returns two documents which basically are the same. There's one is on a finance site and another one is on a multimedia site. So it's pretty quick to do that type of thing. And what I've got is a list of different queries that I'm going to walk through just to so that I don't sit and have to think too much about them. I can just copy and paste the majority of them. So I think I just made a mistake copying there. Okay, so what this query does again is it's a wildcard query, but it looks at a specific site. I put in the path, and the path is the marketing site. So even though I've now searching for generic terms, everything that gets returned will now be coming from the marketing site. So it's again pretty easy to understand how that filtering works. And it's basing it again on on whatever algorithm that determines the ranking. The algorithm to return the ranking, however, can be overridden, and you can specify another sort order if you choose. So again, going back to my query over here, what I've got is an algorithm that says sort by size descending. So instead of basically appending, again in single quotes because this is how the query works, and I append that to the query string, and I do a search, it will now sort items based on the size. So the biggest files on this site, for example, are 100 meg, 35 meg, whatever the case may be. If I remove the path from this query string and I search across the entire environment, that same search sort order will be applied across the entire environment. No such things as delegation issues and things like that. So basically within the environment, as soon as the search result is complete, you'll see that there are a lot bigger files that are contained in my environment that exceed 100 meg. Hopefully it's running along now. Normally returns a bit quicker than this. Okay, so you can see it's basically finished now. There's more than 500 items. The first couple of items are 2 gig in size, 1.87 gig, and so forth. So that basically is kind of the functionality that you can do, and you can search all different things, and I'll go into a couple more of those just now. If I do another search, for example, and I say I don't want to do a wildcard search query on the marketing side, I want to search for a specific term. And in this case, sorry, I copied 2 lines there by mistake. And what I'm doing now is I'm searching for a search term Hyper-V. Just to take you across to my multimedia site, You'll see there's a bunch of documents. There's also a bunch of different libraries in the site. So one of the libraries is training material. Within the training material library, I know that there's actually something called Hyper-V somewhere, but I don't know exactly where it is. But I know it's on my site, and a lot of people have complained about being able to search within folders in gallery controls. And what this now does is it returns information that is sitting in a subfolder under training material, under different subfolders within that. So no real work to get that information returned. It's basically just displayed doing that. Again, if I did a wildcard query, like I said, and you only wanted to retrieve the items within a particular folder, you can basically do that by putting in that into the path. So the path is looking for information. Just need to put an asterisk quote there, and I do a search, and it will then find the information based again on a particular search sort order, whatever, and it's showing me stuff from the training material document, from the folder within the training material document library. And there's a lot of different files here. Some of them are quite big. What I'm going to do though is take I can see, for example, there are files dated there going all the way back to 2006, and other files that are on 2019. If I wanted to, I can now go and say, well, let's refine this, and I want to specifically order it by date modified, just to see how that works. So I've got a query that says sort by last modified date descending. So what will happen now is it'll show the latest documents. Sorry, I need to do append. That to the query. And again, these different things could be put into drop-down lists, so people don't have to understand, the exact syntax and things like that, because I'm going to talk about these drop boxes and what they do shortly. So now I've sorted this document library or this folder, whatever the case may be, based on last modified date, and it'll take me some time to find the oldest ones. So if I instead choose to change this to ascending, just to you'll see now that the oldest files are now listed first. So pretty easy to do to do something like that, and no real, once you know the syntax or whatever, like I said, if you implemented it in different drop-down boxes, you can abstract the technicalities of doing it by, from users having to put in that code. So a couple more examples is that I've got a multimedia site with other documents in it, mostly photos and videos. So I'll do a search on that library, and what I want, and you'll see why I'm doing this particular search in a second. So it's now displaying a bunch of different files again based on the standard type of search. There's HTML files, there's folders, and there'll be a lot of images within this folder. But on the surface it doesn't show the images. It kind of shows me a bunch of information I'm not particularly interested in. So this is where I can use my filter document types. And I can say, actually, what I'm interested in is JPG files, for example, and I can do a search, and it will now filter the results and only show me JPG files in this result set that is displayed. So you can see these are the JPEG files, whatever, that are displayed. Taking a little bit further, what I could also do, for example, is say I'm not interested in JPEG files. What I'm really interested in is Microsoft type documents. So I can do a filter query and say, show me all documents, show me perhaps PowerPoint presentations, XLS files. And that's all I have to do. I do a search now, and you'll see it suddenly changes to the result sets to those type of files. And again, like I said, I can do filters on or sorts and change the sort order, etc. There are many other things that we can do as well. So I can, for example, again say, looking at these results, they range between different dates or whatever the case is. Let me just take away these filters just to make sure that refinement works. And I can go and say, let's say, take everything that was created from the Just again put this in single quotes. Everything where the last modified date was from the 15th of October and beyond. So in this query it didn't return something, or I typed in something wrong. In fact, I think I wasn't supposed to put in the single quotes. So it is quite funny about that type of thing. It does need to be done in the correct syntax. So I'm basically now returning information, and all of these files you'll notice are now dated from upwards of the 15th of October. I can further refine that and say, well, I'm not interested in information coming from November, so I want to limit it to just October, and I can again just append another query string value, whatever, to the search term. And what will now happen is that it will only return items spaced between the 15th of October and the 30th of October. So that's pretty awesome. That's all good stuff. But there are many other things that we can do as well. So if I go back to my marketing site, what I'm going to do is there's obviously been a lot of people that request or have problems and issues with retrieving items within subfolders on lists and things like that because it's not supported. But with using search, that actually becomes possible. So on my marketing site, for example, I've got a list here that contains, this is basically a list. It's got a few items in it, and I can do a search based on something that is some word or something that's contained in that list. So in this case, I'm going to type in April. So here, essentially what I do is I can type it. So I can just replace this and just type in April, and that will be more than sufficient. It should be. It'll come up in the search results somewhere now. And HR director, if I click on that, will open up, and it's probably got probably assigned the manager is probably April somebody. So you can see April Stewart is the manager there. But always taking a little step further, because I know what's returning, the type of information that's being returned in this query includes documents, and I want to filter out documents. I just want list items because, like I said, I had to browse through these different items to find the item I was looking for. So all I need to do is add another refinement filter, content type item. Now I do need to put it in single quotes. And you'll see now I've narrowed it down specifically to, and this is, information that's sitting in that list. But I've also got another list that's set up here that is called ABC. And in the ABC list, I've got a couple of subfolders with some other information in there. So if I go into the World Cup folder, South Africa just won the World Cup in rugby, so it's pretty awesome. I've added a list item, talking about that. And what I can now do is I can, for example, basically go and change this query and type in something like England, for example. In fact, I'm just going to take away the whole thing. I don't need to put in this refinement filter. And the first thing that comes up is that result. So again, like I said, it's highly efficient in terms of what it's capable of doing. The other thing that's really interesting is that in using Power Apps, a lot of people have complained and asked for functionality such as being able to refine content within document libraries based on the content type, or within lists for that matter. So on one of the sites that I have created a content type called meeting agenda. And that's basically sitting on this test site over here. And if you look here, there's a couple of different content types set up. One of them is meeting agenda. So all I have to do now is I can do a global query basically, and I can say that I'm looking for documents across my entire tenant that the content type is meeting agenda. Quick search on that, and you can see immediately it pops up just with those 3 different items that are now meeting agenda type files. See if there's anything else on this. What I can also do furthermore, and there's always lots of things that can be added to this, and you can see why this is so powerful, because it's such a simple flow and yet it's able to do all these things. So I can now take terms that are defined as managed metadata terms, which you can thus create your own managed metadata terms in order to surface information using this type of search query. And what I'm doing in this query is I'm looking for anything with the word online contained in the title. So if I do a search now, instead of returning other information, all of this type of content is now basically contained the title contains the word online. And I can do further filters. Say, for example, like I said, if I was looking just for doc files and not other types of files, I do a search and it will refine that right back down to one individual document with a very simple query. Taking that away and just going back to a generic search, I just want to show you the stuff that make sure I've covered everything in here that I wanted to show. For example, I can say something like views in lifetime. So if I take this query and I want to see the most popular documents that have been viewed in the entire lifetime, and I add that query into the thing. Sorry, I'm missing a quote, single quote there. Basically what happens now is that okay, if I exclude the folders, it's supposed to be displaying views in lifetime. Maybe it's possibly to do with this because I'm filtering by documents. Let me just change that to something else. These are files have never been looked at, but possibly. And now we can see that the home page of my tenant is being viewed 4,500 times, and all of these other ones have been viewed 250 times, 73, descending all the way down to whatever the case may be. I think that covers it. You can also do there's lots of different things that are possible with this API, and you can go more specifically. Instead of just searching by path, I can type in site name is equal to that, and it will return information contained in that direct site, not what should do. Anyway, that's not too important. I think I've covered most of those things. So if I now go back to the other drop-down box that I've got over here, and you'll see what I can do is also search by something many of you will be familiar with in SharePoint or in Office 365 when you do a search, and you can refine results based on documents, items related to users, people results, and such forth. So I just again need to put this in single quotes in order to append that query to it. And if I put in, I want to do a search for documents, type in a search, what will happen now is instead of having to type in all the different types of documents, it already refines that for me. So all the stuff that's being returned is a type of document, and there's a lot of different stuff that's available there. Like I said, I don't have too many Excel files that in my environment, so if I just refine that a little bit further, and I choose that alongside with, sorry, I took away the, no I didn't, I left the document things there, but basically now it's down to 11 items that are being returned. And again, I'm going to carry on and show you even more stuff. So if I, let's take this away and say, for example, I want to search for items related to the current user, to me. And I can do a search, and this is again type of functionality when you navigate to sites. Again, if I take away this refinement filter because I don't want just the 11 items, this will then show me a set of results that I've most recently been working on or updated, etc. And again, there's things like, for example, a list with app feedback, subfolder, whatever. I can click on that. It opens it up to the specific list, and you can see this is a list where it's now taken me through 3 different sub-level folders on that list and found out, and the title of that is how many subfolders deep can we go. The other thing, one more thing that is really cool is I can do a search for people. So if I refine this and say I'm looking for any user in the organization, and I just put in a star again, type this in, what will now happen is it shows me all the users that I've created on my tenant. So the things where I've assigned the manager to different people, etc. And at the last one there, I've got somebody called Sven. So let me say I want to filter, and I know the guy's name or something. I can do a search for that particular person, click on the search button. It shows me that person with my email address. That's, I got a great domain name there. And it now returns that information. I can go into that account and it'll open up that person within Delve and see what that person is working with. And it's really as simple as that. Nothing complex at all to expose that type of information. Some other queries and types of queries I can do is I can search for things like local videos. So any videos that are perhaps on the environment, wherever they may be contained, and it's now showing me that list very similar to the list that I had before. Maybe I'm only looking for file types of MOV, for example. Search for those and click search, and it will refine that again. So I can do all types of refinement. I can combine as many different search queries as I want. I can add, for example, I'm not looking for anything generic. I'm looking for something with the word color. And you know, there's color, and now all of a sudden there's a lot of items that are pertaining to color. So all of this stuff is pretty awesome. I can pick up recently changed items in general, which is I'm the only one on this tenant, so this largely reflect the same type of things that I had before. If I again remove that filter and just search, you'll see that it will go up from 115 items to something else, 500 items. And again, these are all different things that I've created recently. I think that largely covers these things. Popular documents as well, so the same type of thing. And that that largely covers the type of things that I wanted to show you. There was one more thing I wanted to show you on the marketing site, and just to give you an idea, is that if I was perhaps only looking for folders on the marketing site, what I could do is put a filter in. And I know that folders are actually typically HTML files that you navigate to, and if I put in the HTML filter, you'll see that the results are mostly folders. So again, there's multiple levels deep. I can click on that, open up that folder, and return those results depending on how you've on the actual app that you created. I don't know what this is doing. It's coming along and doing something, but if I click on the link below that, one of those should pop up. But I think you get the idea. Not quite sure why that may be failing. I've just closed the app. So again, I think basically that covers what I wanted to showcase in the demo. I think it's really awesome. I'm going to share this flow and this app within the blog that is forthcoming, because it's so simple, and you can get an idea for yourself all the type of things that are possible. Like I said, what you can do in your environment, if you're an admin, you can go and create your own managed properties based on call properties, such that you can type in specific queries, perhaps pertaining that have got something with an author. And I'll just go back to where I'm running this over here. So I can go and do a search for, just get the syntax right, plus and plus, let's get all that right, and then put in brackets And again, now what it'll basically do is refine results, and should hopefully just show me a whole bunch of documents that I've created. I don't think there are any, there may be other documents from somebody else, but for example, if I change this to another managed metadata property title and do a search, it will now find the information specifically that contains different documents with my name in the title. And that pretty much wraps it up. I hope you enjoyed this demo, and yeah, you'll see the blog forthcoming